imagine going on vacation to New Orleans for Mardi Gras and not being able to order locally caught shrimp, crabs, or fish at your favorite seafood restaurant because they've been wiped out by an oil spill? There are 33 deep oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. This disaster could have happened to any one of these. Not one has a viable emergency oil cleanup plan in place. BP's oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico reflects the need to review current oil drilling policies and technologies available to prevent or minimize impact on the ecology of the area. First, I will establish that BP lacked a contingency plan to address a severe oil spill in the Gulf region. Second, I will show that any oil company who is performing in deep sea oil drilling should be required to have a detailed contingency plan to deal with any drilling accidents. And finally, that the oil plan should be reviewed thoroughly to ensure that not only it's effective but also practical. In April 2010, an explosion occurred on the BP oil rig Deepwater Horizon, located off the coast of Louisiana. The oil rig eventually completely broke apart, causing the sink into the Gulf. As a result, oil began to directly flow into the ocean. By the end of April, oil was still flowing into the Gulf at a rate of 25,000 barrels of oil a day. Initially, BP tried various measures in order to put a stop to the spill. However, there was no emergency response plan in place. Oil companies were unwilling to pay for a plan that they felt was unnecessary. Deepwater wells, such as the Deepwater Horizon one, are intended to drill in the water for oil, going towards depths of 5,000 feet, which is almost a mile below the ground. Because of the depth, high pressure is required, which increases the risk of a blowout. The government agency in charge of issuing leases for oil drilling was not effective in regulating the oil industry, especially with respect to the oil contingency spill plans. According to the Washington Post, BP's own exploration plan submitted to federal regulators in February 2009 minimized the danger of a spill. The company said it is unlikely that an accidental oil spill release would occur from the proposed activities. While it acknowledged that a spill could cause impact to wetlands and beaches, it added that due to the distance to shore, 48 miles, and the response capabilities that would be implemented, no significant adverse impacts are expected. It said any effects on fish or shellfish would be sublethal. Hammond Eve, who studied offshore drilling and its environmental impact for the Department of Interior Mineral Management Service, or MMS, said the federal agency never planned for a response to an oil spill of this size. They noted, "We never imagined that it would happen because the safety measures were supposed to work and prevent it from happening." BP convinced federal regulations that the blowout prevention systems, a series of valves and other controls designed to shut down a well if subsurface pressures become unmanageable, would work. Therefore, it thought any leaks would not be large and they would be contained long before they would reach the shore. MMS accepted BP's position and did no further independent analysis or research on its own. They did not regularly test the system and essentially lied to the U.S. government. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration officials last fall warned the Department of Interior, which regulates offshore oil drilling, that it was dramatically underestimating the frequency of offshore oil spills and was dangerously understating the risk and impacts a major oil spill would have on coastal residents. Technology innovations and safety practices must keep pace with the scope of the deep sea drill oil industry operations and safety requirements. The use of the oil boom is an example of such a technology that is not effective. More than 500,000 feet of oil booms have been strung throughout the Gulf of Mexico in response to the spill. In sheltered areas such as the harbors, the booms work effectively. However, in open turbulent water, the booms do not catch the oil since the oil-ridden waves jump over the booms and oil penetrates onto the other side. In open turbulent water, you can't catch the oil, said Robert Villa, professor of civil and environmental engineering at the University of California at Berkeley. There's an intense wave action out there most of the time. According to experts, in most cases, oil containment booms are effective only when skimmer boats and equipment are available to remove oil from the water. Villa also states, a boom is designed to concentrate oil so it can be removed, and it won't work at all in high wind and rough waters. It is very clear that the oil companies need to create a plan that would minimize the likelihood of a major oil spill and provide new technologies that would protect the environment from such a spill. The oil companies need to create a comprehensive contingency plan that takes into account the possible inability to cap a well prior to the discharge of a large amount of oil. The oil industry is comprised of several large companies, perhaps a consortium of oil companies representing the overall oil industry. They could be assembled to review the entire deep-sea drilling process, including an in-depth review of the deep-water drilling platform structures, as well as any safety features that need to be put into place. The government agency in charge of monitoring oil, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Regulation, and Enforcement, which replaced MMS, should make sure that the oil companies have a plan in place, test the effectiveness of any devices intended to contain the oil in case of a spill, and do periodic unannounced inspections of the oil rigs, platforms, and wells. This agency needs to ensure that government inspectors have the needed background knowledge and experience to recognize potential hazardous conditions. According to William J. Broad of the New York Times, one possible lesson of the disaster is the importance of improving blow-up preventers, which are devices that are atop the wells that cut off gushing oil in case of emergency. Even before the disaster, the operators of many Gulf rigs had switched to a more advanced preventer, strengthening this last line of defense. Safety of oil rig workers also needs to be addressed. Last year, MMS published its review of deaths and accidents occurring on oil rigs between 2001 and 2007. It stated that 41 workers died and 302 were injured during that 6-year period. Most workers killed or injured were as a result of human error, including a lack of communication between the operator and contractors, a lack of written procedures, and a failure to enforce existing procedures. As a result of the findings, the MMS is developing new rules that would require rig operators to develop programs focused on preventing human error in an area that received relatively little attention in the past. By implementing the 3 recommendations listed above, the oil industry and the Gulf communities will experience many gains. After the many changes of the structure and the processes of the oil rigs, the possibility of another major deep oil spill will be less likely to happen or hopefully not happen again at all. As a result, ocean and coastal ecosystems will not be impacted by oil pollution, fishing and recreation industries will continue to flourish, and deep-sea oil rig employees will gain from increased safety and operational procedures. Despite the many positives, the oil industry may feel that the added cost for improved rig operation and safety cannot be recovered in the price of the oil. The cost of recovery from a major oil spill, such as BP's, definitely has an adverse impact on the community profitability. Also, the cost of reversing public opinion as a result of a major oil spill is quite expensive. The emphasis on improved deep-sea oil rig safety and operation improvements would stimulate new companies and products which result in companies such as BP that have been involved in problems that could potentially be taken out of business. As I've already discussed, the lack of any regulation or enforcement of the deep-sea oil drilling practice led to a 90-day period turning a once beautiful, pristine Gulf Coast community into an economic and environmental problem. In conclusion, both the government agencies and the oil industry were naive about the possibility of a major oil spill in the Gulf region and its ecological impact. The April 2010 BP oil spill presented a warning to the Gulf and other offshore exploration regions. As a result of BP's non-existent contingency plan, the tragic oil spill made it aware that the oil industry needed to create effective plans that could lessen to diminish the effects of a major oil spill. Being able to order good, safe seafood can only continue to happen if the problems associated with the deep-sea oil drilling are carefully analyzed and effective policies are implemented, or else we will not be ordering a fish fillet sandwich, but instead we'll be gagging on BP oil-soaked oysters.